Namaste and welcome to another edition of the Bharatvaarta Weekly. I'm Roshan Cariappa. I have with me Abhishek Paul and Nirav Kanodra to run you through the news and events of the week that was. India's GDP numbers are out. The GDP grew by 7.2% last year for 22-23, despite being lower than the year before that, which was at 9.1% for 21-22. India still beat every major economy. China came in second place at a modest 4.4%, and Saudi Arabia at third with 3.7%, and so on. India is expected to outperform other large economies for the coming year as well, and the trend is expected to continue for the rest of the decade as well. Nirav, plenty of signals have been indicating that, coming out of COVID, India is one of the better economies, right? And these numbers further indicate that, right? And if you look at all of the business activity that's happened, whether it is Tata signing up for a new EV plant in Gujarat, or Foxconn announcing that they're going to make iPhones near Bangalore, and the Morgan Stanley report that came out with the MD Rhythm Desai being very optimistic about India, and so on, right? All of these multiple signals seem to indicate that we're doing really well.
Yeah, so I think, see, GDP number comes out once a quarter, and there are a lot of people who kind of claim that, that, GDP number may not be accurately collected. So Arvind Subramaniam, one of the previous chief economic advisors, kind of said that, right? But what we can see is the decisions taken during COVID, right? And so there are few things which are going in India's favor. So one was that in during COVID, I think India gave ensured that people do not suffer due to lack of food, and we had like enough food grains, and a lot of farming activity was normal. So free food, I think 10 kgs per person per month of like cereal, either rice or wheat, and 5 kgs of pulses like dal were given for free. Our PDS system worked very fine, and unlike the Western world, we did not give a lot of cash handout. That kept inflation under control. That while people had enough to eat, even if they could not have a earning livelihood, we did not have any mass starvation. So I think that was a good thing, because then once you start giving handouts, it's very tough to pull them back, and that has led to a lot of inflation and those problems elsewhere. Then the second thing is India had a big NPA crisis and a big banks were saddled with bad loans, etc. And the last of it, towards the end, was ILNFS going under and Punjab Maharashtra Cooperative Bank going under. This is all 2018, 2019, and since then, like, we've actually worked to like clean up bank balance sheets. A lot of PSU banks, some of them were merged, so a lot of hard work has gone into that. So now in this cycle, lending and all of that is a positive, good thing. Third thing is that you had Reserve Bank of India ensured that when our imports collapsed, they built a war chest of FX reserves so that they did not let the currency strengthen so much. So that once everything opens up, they did not let the currency weaken too much either. So they did a good thing. On petrol, also when global petroleum prices fell, we actually increased excise duties. So during COVID, so what they did was build up buffers in the good times, and then when things and oil demand increased and globally oil prices rose after like Russia's war on Ukraine, then you reduce those taxes. So that was a little bit counter-cyclical policy. So what I'm saying is all these actions, it's not that, oh, we are lucky. Lastly, uh, due to the war on Russia and Ukraine, we got an alternative to get cheaper oil, right? And which we've kind of, some of it excess, we exported as diesel to Europe back again. And uh, apart from all of this, it is the China plus one story. So the world realized during COVID that China was very critical. Plus, India independently has done a lot of PLI schemes to attract investment and manufacturing within the country. We were very strong in services. Manufacturing was one sector which we are lagging behind. So, what I'm saying is there are a lot of active decisions taken. So, this is all the input, what all has gone in, and maybe see one quarter of GDP being a slightly higher, etc., is not going to make me very happy. What we need is a process. Does this get repeated quarter after quarter, year after year, and it has to go on for a decade or so? And that is what actually China or earlier East Asian tigers like Taiwan, Korea, and before that Japan have done, right? We need this for decades. So we are on the right path, you can say. And then compared to the GDP number which comes out once a quarter, my favorite indicator is the GST collection data. So GST collection data comes out. You I remember talking on the podcast when we went to 1 lakh crore in about 2020. And now we are routinely crossing 1 lakh 65,000 crores. So I think the budgeted number is about 1 lakh 50 to 1 lakh 60,000 crores a month. And now we are crossing those numbers, and those numbers are coming higher than expected. So the GST collection is actual tax collected, right? So people have consumed something, people have spent money, and this is the tax collected. Obviously, it represents or more heavily skewed to the top half. So there are critics who criticize everything. So there's no GST collected on agri products. So they say, oh, what about the poor people, etc. But this shows the level of activity in that segment, and like obviously more luxury items are taxed higher at a higher rate of GST at 28%. Some of the essentials are at lower rates. But what this is telling you is that the level of economic activity is picking up and it's on a steady path. And a lot of these inputs have gone in. There are a lot of active policy tools which have gone in. So that is not just from the government. Second, India has got a decent demographic structure. Also, after like kind of having like a lost decade after the financial crisis in 2008 to 2019, I would say is like we've had like subpar growth. So businesses also who are overly leveraged, some of them have gone bust, and the bankruptcy code has like let their assets be redistributed. Go Air recently has filed for bankruptcy, but overall, all the businesses have kind of like some of the weaker hands have folded, but the other ones who've consolidated, cleaned up their balance sheet, they've been running very prudent policies, the companies as well. And now they are investing. So that's also a very positive sign. So unlike again in the West, what has happened is the companies have only bought back their own shares or like paid dividend away, and they've not invested. I think the Indian companies are investing right now. So I think all these are very positive signs. And what I want is we keep beating expectations month after month, quarter after quarter, and years to come, right? So that is where the real momentum is. There are critics for everything, and obviously, any number you put out, somebody will say that something is wrong, and like one number doesn't make much, right? Yes, we are happy about it, but this has to be repeated over and over again over years. That actually sees visible difference to rest of the country. Another positive thing is when the GDP grows faster than expected, then tax collections are a little higher than expected. So what the government can do is either borrow less or spend more on infra, spend more on actual things which have a bigger multiplier effect. So we get into a virtuous cycle. So I've droned on a lot, but I think all of these things are very positive, and we should celebrate them and continue working hard so that this continues to go ahead.
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, on that somewhat positive note, in a rather tragic time, we bring the podcast to an end. Thank you so much for joining us. If you've liked the content, then don't forget to share and subscribe this podcast. Follow us for similar content on politics, policy, and culture. From Abhishek, Nirav, and myself, thank you so much for joining us. Do stay safe, take care, and see you next week. Jai Hind.